what happened here in Hungerford on August the 19th shocked this whole land. A small country town, long in history, rich in memories, beautiful in its surroundings. Surely this is the very epitome of the England of which poets have written and expatriates have dreamt. That such a place should, on a summer afternoon, erupt in gunfire and terror, blood and death, was quite literally shocking to all of us. The violence which erupted here was irrational. It was random, indiscriminate, devoid of any comprehensible motive. The human mind is the most complex and delicately balanced of all creative things. Wisdom cannot foresee all the consequences of its sickness.
I was in my auntie and uncle's house at number 3 Southview when I heard some banging, continuous. So I stood up and looked out the window and there was a man. I knew it was Michael Ryan. He looked at me and he pointed the gun, and I ducked really soon. And I felt just a horrible feeling that went through me, saying that he was going to kill me.
Ryan came home and he seen my dad out the back, creosoting the fence, which he was going to do while the children at number 5 was away on holiday, so it would be nice and dry for when they came back off holiday. Ryan must have just seen me dad, shot me dad, then me mum must have put her head round the door and just shot me mum.
This firing was still going on. About 10 minutes later, I had the courage to stand up again, and he looked at me, this punk rocker. I didn't know who he was or where he come from or what he was doing even, but he looked at me and said, "Get out of there." So I signalled back no, and I led down again, and straight after that I heard the door open and I screamed really loud because I thought it was him, and this punk rocker got hold of me and started to run, and as we were running I looked back and I saw him shoot his mum.
The power of the weapon that was being used could be heard all over town. The smell in the air of the cordite was quite uncanny. It was very frightening. I think everybody was frightened.
I heard this banging. I thought it was children with fireworks or something, a bit early, but they do find all manner of things that make noises. So I went out into the garden and said, "For God's sake, stop that noise. It's getting me down." And they turned straight round and shot me.
Outside here, there were helicopters, police helicopters, all down along the wall out the back here. There were armed police with dogs. And at one point I called out to one of the armed policemen and said, "Can you tell me about my husband? You know, I think he's been shot. Can you tell me?" He's the taxi driver. And he basically said, "You know, just get away from the window, love. I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything. I've just been dropped here. You know, I don't really know where I am, to be honest."
I knew that I had to get maps and street plans because the armed officers who had to come from Newbury, Oxford and Reading wouldn't know the town at all. I was doing this for some 15 minutes and the sergeant called me into the front office. As I was wearing shorts and a T-shirt, I thought he was going to tell me to go home, you know, as obviously many other officers had turned up. But in fact, he said, "I've got some bad news for you. Your father's been killed and your mum's been shot." They were literally 100 yards from my home, having driven from Strood in Kent. The first thing she was aware of was the windscreen going through. And then she heard the sound of shots being fired rapidly I think my mother knew that my father had been killed. She got out of the vehicle and crouched down behind the engine to get some cover. She saw the gunman reloading, and she was obviously petrified that he was going to have another go at her. But with that, she said she saw him walk off down the road and aim at another vehicle.
We heard more firing, shots being fired, and that I've since found out was when he was holed up in the school. And nobody came, and we waited, and still nobody came, and I kept saying to Liz, well, he must be all right, perhaps he's just injured.
I gradually sat up and worked Tommy Bottom to the back door and got in and got through to the telephone in the hall to phone dial 999. They said somebody would be along with you soon. Of course, soon was 5 hours later.
So it was around, I think around 7, somewhere around there, that Graham came in, and I was feeding the baby. I was sitting on the sofa feeding him, and I just looked at him. He stood in the doorway, and I just looked at him. And I didn't need him to say that Barney was dead. I mean, I just had to look at his face. And I just said to him, Graham, is he dead? And he sort of walked towards me, and he said, give the baby to Liz. I said, just tell me, is he dead? And he said, give the baby to Liz. So Liz took the baby, and he just said, I'm so sorry. I was just in a bit of a daze, you know. I mean, I'd got things automatically that I knew the baby would need, and packed them all together. And then we left here, and as we were going to the car, Mum said, now, you're going to have to be very brave, because we had to actually drive past Barney's car. And she said, just put your head down and just don't look. But of course I did the human thing and had to look, which I think was probably the worst part for me, because I don't know what time it was, or, you know, and I know it was just beginning to get dark. We headed down the road towards the corner, and the police photographers, I think, were there, and they had the black bag out by the side of the car, and the police made us stop right behind it. And I just wanted to go to him, but of course Mum just tried to make me put my head down and not look, and I think I shouted something at the policeman that made us stop, or something like that. I can't really remember, but he then waved us past and let us go past. It was just so unreal. I mean, the whole thing was just so unreal.
The Thursday morning, the hardest thing we had to do was sort of tell the children, which we just sort of brought them all downstairs, and we just sort of curled up on the settee here and just told them. It was very difficult. I think we sort of sat on the sofa for about 30 minutes, I expect, just sort of crying into each other's shoulders. It's questions the little ones asked you, which is difficult to answer, like sort of how was they killed, and how are they, you know, because one of the questions Laura asked us afterwards was, we better take a blanket up to Mum, Nanny and Grandad, because they'd be cold, to cover them up. And we said, no, they'd be all right.
Colin's mum and dad, every Sunday when we went out, they used to give the girls 20 pence and a bag of sweets and their comics. They'd done it for all the grandchildren. When we went in, on the table where Mum had come home on Wednesday from the market with the sweets and the comics, there was all the little piles set out, ready to give them.
It was nice to be there, because you felt you was in the house with them still. And we sort of done a little bit each day. We still went down my dad's gardening, because my dad loved his gardening, and still looked after the vegetables and that in the garden. And I think it took us about, I don't know, a week to sort through everything. And the last day we was there was the hardest, because we went up there. I knew that was the last time sort of I was going to go in the house. And to see it all empty, that sort of did upset me. I think it really sunk in that my mum and dad was dead. And I wasn't going to go back there again.
We were on holiday in France, and people had been going mad trying to get hold of us for a week, which they hadn't done. We didn't know nothing about it until we got on the ferry and we read it in the newspaper. But of course, by this time it was a week old, so a lot of the facts were left out in the newspaper. So all we really knew was a few people had died, and just at the bottom there was a tiny little bit, and it said that we were on holiday. You know, they were on holiday in Europe and haven't realised that their house had burnt down.
It was just nothing left apart from the extension.
We expected to sort of go in and see a part of a wardrobe, or
Some of the
burnt out
still there.
sofa or something like that. And of course, when we got there, there was only the video in the living room, and then, like I say, the kitchen wasn't that bad, was it?
Just black.
I got up the following morning, and my sister and my brother-in-law were there. They'd travelled down through the night from Woking, and we cried together, out of tears, sat talking, and I think it was around 5:45, 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang, and Michael went to the door, and that was sort of the start of the press coming. And he just said, no thank you, we don't want anything, we've got nothing to say, and shut the door. And it was literally every 10 minutes or so, pressmen, reporters, photographers, news, film crews, and really wanted nothing whatsoever to do with it. It's my opinion of it is it's an invasion. It was a terrible invasion of the privacy, our privacy at the time. And they just kept coming. They wouldn't take no for an answer. You'd tell one lot no, and 10 minutes later they'd be back again, the same faces.
Right, I'd just like to present to the Mayor of Hungerford a cheque and cash for £1,300.
One of the marvellous things that followed the tragedy, if you can say a marvellous thing can happen after a tragedy, was this willingness to help. When I suppose normally in our lives, particularly here perhaps in the south of England, we're all concerned with earning our bread and butter, our money, doing our own thing, following our own pleasures and pursuits. I can remember when I went up to visit this family who were bereaved for the funeral, which was already arranged, how all the people had come out of their houses and were almost standing by their garden gates. And that to me was very reminiscent of the last war, when people would gather in the evenings, particularly when we had lots of daylight during the war in the evenings, how people would talk about things and incidents. And there was a complete opening up of people. Wherever I went, people who I'd not really talked to before in the town, everyone was ready to talk. And in a way, everyone was ready to help.
As I walked back to school, all my friends were talking about it, and I just kept quiet. And then Amanda Burrows, my best friend, she was in Foxes with my Uncle Alan Lepetta that had been shot, and she said to me, "How's your uncle?" And I just kind of tried to keep the tears away and said, "He's fine, thank you."
Can you all just look a little bit more worried? Like, not more worried because you've done this terrible, terrible thing and you're really terrified about what you're going to say. So go back to Heather again.
There's one more angel in heaven. There's one more star in the sky.
The boys kind of made jokes about it, saying things like, "Hungerford's dead on Wednesday." And it really got me going, and I started to cry. I've never been up to the room that Michael Ryan shot himself in. They have book club in there, and all my friends go up to it, but I just won't go up to that room.
Like, love and peace, never die.
I think that Michael Ryan is still alive. I think that he's going to jump out on me from anywhere and just kill me. I think he's alive in himself, not a ghost or anything else. Just think it's him still alive.
Michael Ryan had always lived there from when we moved in, and yet he wasn't like a normal neighbour. He was a very quiet boy, kept himself to himself. Sometimes too quiet, maybe, because he never seemed to have any friends. And I do know that it caused a lot of people to ridicule him for being so lonely. And I don't think he appreciated that very much.
I knew Michael Ryan from the day we sort of first walking, because he was 3-4 years younger than me. Sometimes he used to come round and play with us, sometimes he used to keep himself to himself. You could be playing with all your other mates in the road, and one day he might come and play with you a game of football or whatever, and you might not see him again for 2 or 3 days.
He was strange. He thought more, as like somebody would think of their wife, he thought of his car. He idolised his car, and the kids couldn't even go nowhere near it. They only had to go past it, and he'd be out screaming and all at him, or send his mother out, telling him to get away from it.
The press gave Ryan this Rambo-like image. I mean, that made me so angry. I went through different stages, I don't know, of grief or whatever. And I got to one stage where I was very, very, very angry. And, you know, they portrayed this madman, which is all I can think of him as a Rambo-type figure, you know, and the way I thought of it was Sylvester Stallone portrays the character Rambo. He's a film star. They've made him up to be an equal to that, which in my opinion was just so wrong, you know. He was nothing. You know, he was nothing but a madman. You know, the thing that frightens me, they've given him this image that he's this big cult-type figure, and that, heaven forbid, God forbid, whatever, that one day you're going to get somebody who just flips his lid and is going to try and outdo him. They're going to think, well, all right, so he's dead, but he was made a star through the newspapers.
If he was still about, or perhaps I would be angry, because I'd be able to probably do something about it, and I'd be able to take, say, the temper in me out on him. And the only way I can feel is to sort of get away on my own, you know, take the dog for a walk for, say, an hour or so, or sit in the bedroom even for 10 minutes, you know. It's just one of those funny feelings, I suppose. You just sort of sit back on your own and just put things through your own mind, you know, trying to make your own mind at peace.
Yeah, but you wouldn't come out and say that you thought Ryan was evil. I mean, you never spoke about him to me, have you? Really?
No.
I can't see why you feel like that. I mean, he's taken your parents away, he's deprived our children of grandparents, and I hate the person. I know he's dead, but I hate him, and I think, well, evil, what I think about him, it's so evil that I'm embarrassed sometimes to think the way.
I say, you know, he's dead now, so he's not about, so you can't be. There's nobody there to be angry against.
No, but it's bottled up in here. Perhaps if you used to let off steam and get hot under the collar and angry, and then I think perhaps you would not come to terms with it, but because there must be feelings somewhere deep down that you won't even tell me, but perhaps if you was to blow your top now and again, that you would, I don't know, not accept it, but live with what's happened.
That might be why I go off my own.
It might be, yeah.
Quite,
the fact that you can't let it out.
Yeah.
We are coming towards the end of a year when there's been a great deal of sadness and sorrow and suffering, not only in Hungerford, but the message of Christmas is one of new birth, a new life, a new hope. And I think that message is as relevant today as it has been for almost 2,000 years.
Well, he was just so proud of the baby, and before the baby was born, you know, I'd sort of pulled his leg about saying, you know, changing dirty nappies and you'll get a dab hand at it and all this. And he said, won't catch me changing a dirty nappy, you know. But he did absolutely everything for that baby. He bathed him, played with him. He really was just so proud of him. And it was what he had wanted, perhaps for about 5 or 6 years. And that's the one thing that hurts, really. He got what he wanted and just had, you know, short time with him.
Obviously, the children have reacted to what's happened. Philip was very worried about his rabbit to start with. Once he realised that the rabbit was all right, the next thing they went through was the anger of losing all their toys and all their bits because, well, I mean, I should think it was very traumatic for them. Might not mean a lot to us, but to them it was sort of everything. My daughter Callie, she's had more trouble. She doesn't like me going out of her sight. She's got this awful fear that I'm going to be shot. Joanna, she's 3 and she's a bit young to understand really what happened. And the other day we were sat at lunch and she said, Daddy, this afternoon are we going to get Nanny and Grampy from hospital? And I tried to explain to her that Nanny and Grampy weren't coming out of hospital. And she said, but Alan was shot and he come home. She doesn't understand what death really is, whereas Laura, she just won't talk about it. She just says, I'm not talking about it, and she'll get up and walk out. This year they've got a Christmas play, and instead of the little girls dressing up as angels, they're dressing up as stars. And I asked her why, and she said, because when people die, they're angels, and nobody wants to die anymore in Hungerford.
I don't know what we really mean by bereavement. Maybe we are talking about trying to release pain. But I think initially for many people it may just come out as physical pain, like that if I jumped on your foot you just might howl, and that was an immediate physical reaction. Then I think for other people it's a kind of a mental pain, that the kind of thing that when you get a small child hurts itself and then it doesn't cry until it actually catches up with mummy. And then, of course, there can be a kind of a spiritual pain in trying to reconcile and get meaning from all of that.
I mean, I got very angry and bitter about it a few days after it happened. You know, I couldn't understand why him, you know, and I mean, I even got to the stage where I was thinking I could name people that even, I mean, it was probably irrational thinking, I don't know, but I sat and thought of people that it could have happened to, who it deserved to happen to. I mean, but these are the sort of feelings that you get, you know. I mean, I just feel very cheated. I mean, we had 9 years together, and we used to talk about, you know, used to say things like, will you still love me when I'm 60 and wrinkled? And I got very angry and bitter, thinking, well, he's not going to see me when I'm 60 and wrinkled, and I won't see him when he's 60 and wrinkled, and why him? You know, and of course, that one big question, why, will never ever be answered. And the only way I could get away from this bitterness, this angry feeling, was to think, well, it really was a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Sometimes we think about what might have happened had we been here on that day, but the trouble is you could spend the rest of your life of the ifs and buts, and we just try and push it out of our minds as much as possible.
We were in the luckiest place. We were as far away as possible. Had we been here, well, anything could have happened. I could have been going to my wife's funeral, anything. All I can say is we were really lucky where we were. We couldn't have been any luckier. Somebody was looking over us that week. And that's a definite.
No? You want to come out? Do you? When I go to bed at night, yes, I sometimes cry. Now, it's not every night, but it's then that I get this sort of horrific picture of the car covered up. You know, the driver's door opened, and the photographer there, and the black bag. It was just his hand, you know, that's all I could see of him there. And that is a picture that I won't ever forget. It's still very vivid. And every time I see it come up on the news, if they talk about Hungerford on the news, I have to look away because I'm so afraid that they're going to show the picture of the car, which has happened a couple of times, and I've seen it. And it's just there when I go to bed, you know. I mean, I've woken up a few times with the picture there, you know, having dreamed about that part of the journey up to my mum's. And I think that one, you know, one picture will haunt me probably for the rest of my life. I don't know, it may get sort of dimmer as years go by, but I think it will always be there.
Comfort my people, says our God. Comfort them. Encourage the people of Jerusalem. Tell them they have suffered long enough, and their sins are now forgiven. I have punished them in full for all their sins. A voice cries out, prepare in the wilderness a road for the Lord. Clear the way in the desert for our God. Fill every valley, level every mountain. The hills will become a plain, and the rough country will be made smooth. Then the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all mankind will see it. The Lord himself has promised this. A voice cries out, proclaim a message. What message shall I proclaim, I ask? Proclaim that all mankind are like grass. They last no longer than wild flowers. Grass withers and flowers fade when the Lord sends the wind blowing over them. But people are no more enduring than grass. Yes, grass withers and flowers fade, but the word of God endures forever.
Well, the bullet went into my groin and came out the back, and it smashed the top of the hip and part of the pelvis. Oh, and the sciatic nerve was shattered in several places, so that I'd lost the use of the leg from the knee downwards and the foot. Well, it would be so different for me in a house than in this. I have to walk a mile down there to the toilet, and of course I'll only have to go across the hall. And the physio reckons that I'll be a lot back to normal by the time I get to Hungerford again.
Of the borough and manor of Hungerford, are requested to attend your courthouse, the town hall, at 9 o'clock this morning to answer to your name, on pain of being fined.
I've started to feel that life is worth living. You know, friends have played a major part, going out with them, that sort of thing. Of course, there was the initial thing about feeling guilty about actually going out and laughing. But I've got over that stage now. You know, I know that Barney would have wanted me to have gone out and laughed and joked about and that sort of thing. I enjoyed myself. But as for this awful cliche, light at the end of the tunnel, yeah, I can see that there probably is light along at the end of the tunnel, or, you know, sort of getting there. But how far along the tunnel I am, I couldn't say, because some days you seem as though you're way up, and another day you're back down again. So I couldn't say that I was halfway or, you know, a quarter of the way. Some days I'm half to 3/4 of the way, and another day I might be right back down at the beginning again. So all I do really is take each day as it comes.
I've enjoyed Tatty Day today because I've been with all my friends scrambling for the money they've dropped and all. It's been a really good day, and I can't wait till tonight when they get drunk and check out all the pound coins. Like last year my sister got a really lot of money. I think it was about £10 she got from the evening. But the boys, they're really rough when you scramble. You have to stand up for yourself and push them out the way and all. I feel much better now after the tragedy because everyone's talking together and become a close family in Hungerford. I did once say that I think Michael Ryan was still alive and he was out to get us all, but I thought that over in bed one night and I think it was a silly thing to say. But the only thing is I would never go in that room that Michael Ryan was shot because I think it would bring back too many bad memories, like I'd see everyone being shot like I saw Mrs. Ryan that day.
That's lovely. Hold it there.
Small one on the chin.
Hold it very still. That's it. One big kiss on his... That's it. Hold it there. Hold it there.
That's enough of that.
Well, a few months after Barney died, you know, and it was quite a while after he died. I was having this sort of dream, you know, the image of the car all covered up, etc. The dreams got fewer and far between, and eventually, you know, there was sort of like one a week or one every 2 or 3 weeks, which, you know, I could cope with. I still wasn't very happy, you know, when I woke up having had the dream, but I could cope with it that way. Then they had almost stopped, and the 6-month anniversary sort of came around, and I had pressmen knocking at the door again, wanting a story. I mean, what they expected me to say 6 months on to what I would have said at the time, I don't know. I didn't actually speak to any of them. I just asked them to sort of leave me alone and go away. But it was after that happened that I started to get this dream again. I moved out of the flat that Barney and I shared on the 8th of February. I still feel that Barney's close to me, you know, in and around the home, not only because of Joe. And, you know, when sort of things go wrong in the house, silly things like knocking over a cup of coffee or dropping a plate, or, you know, you get 4 or 5 accidents in a day. I mean, I have actually shouted at him, God, why aren't you here, you know, to sort of help me over this. You know, it's silly, it sort of seems, and then I feel silly. I think you know what you're doing. But, you know, I feel closer to him actually in the home rather than if I go up to the cemetery. I mean, I go up to the cemetery where I had Barney's ashes buried at least once a week. But I don't particularly feel that close to him there.
I had the operations. It was a long while before they could even teach me to walk, but I was determined that I would get better. Of course, when I went in the second time, that was a relief to know that was probably the last operation I should have. And once I knew I was going to be out of hospital before Easter, I set my goal as Easter communion in church. I can honestly say I've never felt bitter. But I do find it difficult to talk about, yet.
I think it was a great joy to welcome Betty Tolliday back, because she had been, above all the injured, the closest in our congregation, and she wanted desperately, I know, to come back into the community and belong to us once more. And I think in that, of course, is a lot of our healing and our growth, feeling that we are where we ought to be and are growing together with other people. And I'm hopeful that friendship and the support that people are giving her will restore her to health completely.
What happened to me put my family under a great strain. My sister Anne was particularly affected. She was taken ill at Christmas time and died at the end of January. I feel that if I had been fit and could have looked after her, she would have got better. It has been more difficult for me to come to terms with her death than the disability I have.
Peace be to this house. Hear what comfortable words our Saviour Christ says to all who truly turn to him. Come unto me, all that travail and are heavy laden, and I will refresh you. It's like, I suppose, the whole message of Easter, that, I mean, there is a time of dark and a dismal time to go through, but there is that sort of security that the light comes, the sun shines, and the flowers come out. And I think most probably in our human lives we have to reflect that. I remember I was saying about the kind of wartime spirit we had, that people were very much together. And one feels, of course, that after an incident like this has passed, people go back to their old ways, and I suppose that is true to a degree. And to me, this is the tragedy of an awful lot of life, is that we have our job, we have our career, we have our profession or whatever, and people learn a whole certain amount of expertise, as they expect me to have as a priest and so on and so forth. But underneath it all, we are all basically human beings. And it's really that when we are together, we feel right and we feel happiest.
Close friends, I find, throughout the whole ordeal, sort of since last August, have been a great help, you know. I mean, they've been there if I needed them, sometimes there if I've not needed them, you know, but I know that they're there. I tend to talk to close friends a lot, you know, about Barney. I talk about him with them. Some people sort of hedge around the subject of Barney, but I sometimes feel, I don't know if it's hurt or upset that they feel they can't mention Barney's name in front of me. You know, they actually avoid the subject. You know, I mean, I don't want people to avoid the subject of Barney. He was a major part of my life. I'd rather they come bowling out with Barney's name and say, well, what do you think Barney would have said? Or just talking about old times, you know. I mean, it all helps, I think, the process of trying to get over it.
I hadn't been back to Southview since the time of the tragedy. Kevin asked me one night, would I mind going up there to do the painting and the staining. But after a time I thought, well, I've got to go up there again someday. So I told him, yes, I'll do it for him. The first day I went up there was the worst day. Sharon said, how did it go? And I said, well, not too bad. And after that, it's been okay.
Earlier on in the year, things came to a head when I found out that Colin had turned to somebody else. He could talk openly to her and get comfort from this person, which to me was very hurtful, because I would have thought being his wife would have been the person that he should have confided in and received comfort from. And it did cause an enormous strain on the marriage, to the extent that at one time I didn't want to carry on. I wanted to split. You know, I wanted to just out of the marriage. But when Colin went away for a couple of days, he came over and we talked, and we even went away for a weekend on our own without the children, which done us a world of good because we had time for each other. And it's taken some working out. I mean, the trust is still very hard to find. If he goes out, I think, where is he? But now, it's all falling back into place.
I can see it was a silly thing to do, where I should have turned to Sharon to talk to, and I found somebody else to talk to, and I found it easier to talk to her, this person, and I think that's what it was, you know. But now I see how stupid it was, and now I can talk to Sharon easier than I did before. And it's just done us a world of good.
I don't think I had the time for Colin. With 3 children, you're busy most of the time, seeing to their needs. Probably come the evening when there was time for us to talk, we were both too tired to sit down or discuss what was worrying each other. The day I was confirmed was the day that it all came to a head, which really spoilt a very important day to me, because I suppose in a way all my faith went. It was something I've always wanted to do, and I was hoping that Colin was feeling, right, not as I was about confirmation, but I was hoping he was backing me up and supporting me. And I found out that he wasn't really. He was going along with it, but his feelings weren't in it. And to me, then it meant nothing.
One could, of course, always think that life is meaningless. But only we, I think, can find the meaning for our life and the situation in which we live. Of course, it's so easy to say, oh, well, blame God, or to say something is an act of God. And quite often we might do that when, of course, we've got no feelings or belief in God at all, basically. And I think we have to try and then say to ourselves, who is God? What is God actually trying to do in the world? What is the meaning of his creation?
There's a meaning to my life. And the meaning to my life is Joe. I mean, he makes life worth living. As for a general meaning of life, I don't know. Some people say you're put on this earth for a purpose. You know, I mean, what was Barney's purpose? As far as I'm concerned, he was taken away much too young, just as life was becoming very fruitful for us both.
There seems to be a deeper understanding between the people of the town and the police. I think they realise the limitations to what we had locally on that day. God forbid that anything like this would ever happen in any town in England again. But if it happened, I don't think things would change at all. I think it takes some time to get armed units to the scene of any shooting. It's perhaps a price that we have to pay for the policing that we expect. Nobody wants to see armed policemen walking down the streets of our towns.
Port your arms! Prepare to march! March on! Prepare to stand! Stand!
Good afternoon, Barney's Copper.
Copy, John.
Yeah, copy, Jen.
Could you go down to Clark's Gardens and pick Mrs. Tolliday up?
Yeah, where does she want to go?
To go to the High Street to watch the carnival procession.
OK, then I'll go down and sit down over there. OK.
There, John.
Some time ago, a friend of mine who'd been a friend for quite a number of years, and also a friend of Barney's, asked me to go out for a meal with him. I was a bit worried to start with what other people would think, not so much my family, because, you know, straight away when I mentioned it to Mum, she said, oh yeah, go, you know, it's, what's wrong with that? But it was other people, maybe not so, or not as closely involved with me, what they would think and what they would say, whether it was too soon or, you know, things like that. At the end of the day, I decided, well, it's my life. Yes, I would like to go out with Sam. So that's what I did. And we're getting on very well. Joe thinks the world of him, he thinks the world of Joe. If I feel like grieving, then he allows me to do so. He'll sometimes sit with me if I want him to be with me, or he'll leave me on my own if I want to be on my own.
He's clever.
At times I have got very knotted up inside. It's difficult to cope with the guilty feelings. Some of the way I've coped with it is to think, well, you know, the reason I'm in this situation is not my fault. And I think anybody in a similar sort of situation who feels, you know, they never meet anybody. I mean, I felt that way 6 months, 7 months ago. You know, there would never ever be anybody else in my life. But it is possible. I know that Sam is never going to replace Barney. He knows that he's never going to replace Barney. They're two totally different people. And I think as long as you try to keep that perspective, you know, you cannot compare the two. It would be easy to do so. You know, if you have a tiff, oh, well, you know, he wouldn't have said that to me. But you can't do it.
Ouch, you're not biting.
You know, grieving, I think, takes a long, long time. The whole thing is going to take a long, long time to get over. Still a long, long way to go. But the nice thing is I feel that Sam is helping me through it.
things I'm looking forward to now is driving the new automatic metro that I've ordered. My legs now have really got stronger, although there's no feeling from the knee downwards. So that I really got to be careful in case I knock it or anything. Must look where I'm putting it. I haven't been able to cry since this happened. Perhaps I've been a bit near it sometimes, but can never actually... I couldn't force it, which would be wrong anyway, to force tears. I can't be the crying type, I think.
Want me to take that?
Yes, please. I think it is because of how I'm made that I was so determined to get back on my feet and get better again. Get over all the shocks and troubles. And make the best of things.
It's been a hard year for us as a family and for me and Colin. At times I felt that we wouldn't come through it. But now I just really want to pick up the pieces with the kids and make a new life for us in a different way. It won't be the same, but when you've got children you've got to do that. I think the advice I would give anybody that loses somebody close is talk about it and keep talking about it, because I think that's the only way you can accept it, especially if you've got a partner, because if you don't, it'll just push you apart, like it happened to Colin and I.
Recently, coming back on the ferry from France, I met some people and I was asked where I came from. It's no good trying to say, well, I come from near Newbury, because why should you? You know, we're proud of this town, and when I said Hungerford, the first question then was, oh, did you know anyone that was killed? And I think when you say, well, yes, you know, my parents were both shot, the person that asked the question, you know, wants to be swallowed up.
I feel that very much as I go to perhaps other places and people say, you're from Hungerford, and then of course immediately want to say, how is Hungerford now and how are things settling down, with obviously the best of intentions. And sometimes then I almost feel like a bereaved person not knowing really what to say, because they ask the question with the best of motives and interest, but you are rather nonplussed in a sense as to what to say. I suppose for most people, obviously, August the 19th, and certainly for Hungerford, was a crisis. But if we actually look at that Greek word crisis that we use in English, it does really just mean the word judgment. Something has happened over which we are almost forced to make judgments. I mean, either why did it happen, or what does that teach us in how we react in the future? I think all that we can learn from it is that we do not know the span of our lives, and therefore what are we doing with our lives in the time that we might have?
I'll remember you next year. All right. Hello, you can put one in? Thank you very much.
No one has ever explained why Michael Ryan actually did this. It is not something that can be explained, and therefore it's frustrating to be asked the question how, why and wherefore and so on.
My own parents, travelling 120 miles on that day, 100 yards from my house, they get shot. There's got to be fate. I don't think anyone will ever understand how that works. But I miss my dad. We'll never see him again. That hurts. He was a fit man. And there's all the families, I mean, that loss will never be replaced. But it's something that you have to live with. The fact that the gunman killed himself has probably helped me. I think if he survived, and I would be bitter. But as I see it, it is the end of it. I just think we need to rebuild. It might not be so easy for other people, but that's my own personal views, that it's finished.
I think I would just say to anybody, time does heal. Take each day as it comes. If you want to cry, cry. If you feel like laughing, laugh. Because that person that you've lost isn't going to think any less of you for maybe going out once a week and enjoying yourself. You know, and it's difficult. I mean, people said it to me at the time and shortly after Barney was killed. You know, do come out here, do come out there. Life has to go on. And I know you'll think, no, life can't go on. You know, you've lost that person. But if the way I look at it is that Barney is, part of him is still always with me. We were that close, and I know that part of him will always be with me. And yeah, I can have a good swear at him, even though he's not here.
All we want to do now is sort of people to leave us alone, and so we can just sort of settle down and get on with our own lives again. And the way I remember my mum and dad is just for the sort of people they were, how they brought me up, and my sisters, and the happy times we had together. Now that's what we want for my family, so we can all be happy. Hopefully, now it's all over this first year, we can get back to our own lives.